I hope Marcourt sees that in our title slide, I have the Mantis Blackbeard trainer on. That's the kind of purple magazine.
Yeah, you got that from his shop?
Got it from his shop. Patriot Hangout. Yeah.
Nice.
Hope he sees that.
So you're not holding a loaded
all
firearm.
Guns are always loaded.
All guns are always loaded.
We need to hurry up and get this show on the road. I've got some whiskey and cigar drinking to go on.
Waiting for you on the other end.
How many people do you think are going to be mad tonight?
I think there's going to be some people mad. They're already whipped up, telling me what I don't know anything, and it shows. Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are the only live, local, politically conservative, and liberty-minded talk show here in Kootenai County. We're your hosts, Dan and Donna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. Tonight, you can leave those right in the comment section on whichever platform you're watching. So talk amongst yourselves or submit questions there in the comment section to the show, and I'll screen those and get them over to Dan. If you're watching live, this is an important instruction. Make sure to click that share button on whichever platform you're watching. So whether that's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or X, share this live stream to your page or profile so more of us can engage together. For those of you listening back on our podcast, make sure to join us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And a reminder, as always, opinions expressed are ours only and not necessarily that of any of our advertisers, sponsors, affiliates, and also not necessarily of our guests.
Yeah.
And I think that is especially important as you listen to the program tonight. And now here's your host, Dan Wilson.
Fellow Patriots, so good to join with you all tonight in a discussion we do every Wednesday night about all things liberty. Now, we're absolutely guaranteed to piss off some of you, and you'll get over it. Some of you may realize days later that what we were saying really does make sense. Some of you are going to be dogmatic in your approach, and you will remain angry, the angry little trolls that so many of you are. But we do talk about liberty, and it is without compromise. Now, those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Dan Wilson. This is my lovely wife, Donna. I know you hate when I say lovely wife.
Well, it's Wheel of Fortune.
I know. Spin that wheel.
When the person who's the contestant has to introduce who came with them, they were always like, my beautiful, my lovely.
Okay, Pat, I'm going to spin again. I'm going to go for bankrupt.
Need some more creativity there.
Ran for sheriff in Kootenai County in 2024 because I believed, and I still believe, that the current sheriff, who hails from Los Angeles County, is a incompetent buffoon. But I was not successful in my challenge of Bob Norris.
Some would say you're a narcissistic buffoon.
Yeah. Well, my narcissistic
I wonder where
buffoon.
where did that originate?
Do they have a medical degree behind them?
Probably.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are talking about, though, those things that are dear to us: life, liberty, property. Liberty makes it all happen. If you have the liberty to do and pursue those things that make you happy within reason, within the confines of nature's law, well, then this is a show for you. If you do not love liberty, if you don't like people having the ability to not choose a religion, even those of us like myself and Donna that are followers of Christ, we don't demand other people believe like us. We know that in America, you have the right to believe as you want to. You even have a right to protest if you think the current president is acting like a king. Mm-hmm. You also have the right to counter-protest if you're going to put your battle rattle on and be a militia guy down there fighting the evilness of the leftist protesters. I'm not calling them evil. I'm just saying, supposing what the conversation might be. But what happens when you have a extremely conservative area like Kootenai County with some history, and you have leftists that decide that they're going to come into our own county and protest What do you think that's going to look like? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about responsibility and liberty and what you, as a good citizen of Kootenai County, should think about these things, or things that you can think about. We're also going to talk about George Washington and what he had to say about free speech. We're going to talk a little bit about the massage parlor again. I know. I said that we were not going to talk about it again.
We were so done talking about that.
But we are. And we're also going to, well, last week I said that I was going to talk about the Palantir, which is the company that the Trump administration, Homeland Security, Pentagon, Department of Defense, many government entities have entered into contract with this company. They get the name from, you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, but there was this all-seeing crystal ball that they could look into and look into the future. And that's what this sphere was named, the Palantir. And that is how Palantir took its name from the Lord of the Rings, because it casts its eyes down. I wanted to talk about how dangerous this is, some of my concerns, what I know to be factual, what I know to be potentially rumors, but we're not going to have time for that tonight. We'll probably come back here in a couple weeks. We're going to be off the next 2 weeks, business and pleasure. We'll be coming back after the 4th of July holiday, where we'll hit her hard again. So you'll have to, I guess, succumb to watching any of the old previous episodes. But we are going to talk about it because I'm concerned about this all ever seeing eye and compilation of our information by the government, especially when they're using software like Foundry that gathers all this data from all different sources. And then the one that has me more concerned is Gotham, which is the analytics portion to kind of tell you, like the Minority Report, who's most likely going to commit a crime and where are they hiding their money. But we're not going to talk about that tonight because we have so much more. And the remainder of this episode tonight, about 40 minutes. So get your popcorn, get comfortable, take your belt off and unbutton your top button if you need to.
Yeah,
some of us do.
That's why you wear elastic waistband.
Is that my father-in-law wears elastic?
Oh yeah, leisure suits.
Leisure suits with the
blue
the
leisure.
velvet.
Yeah.
You're going to want to get comfortable because we have about 40 minutes where we brought in earlier today special guest Teresa Roth. Ed DePreach, your head's going to explode, no doubt, but you and I can talk later. Maybe we'll give you a chance to give your counter argument to it, but you're going to want to sit around and listen exactly what Teresa has discovered, what she's presented to who. A little bit of a long topic.
I'm going to show a teaser to that. Just
goes on to present the letter that she wrote to various officials. And she talks about the fact that this open letter to the candidates and of the recent election, as well as elections office and county commissioners, that she's been researching election integrity for several years, and an EECS with experience, which is a electrical engineer, computer scientist with experience in the field of microprocessors and data processing. She contends the blatant fraud surrounding this year's North Idaho College trustee elections, which appears to involve voting machines and some questionable activities within election office.
That's coming up a little bit later in the program, so that's just a teaser of
this will no doubt make people very, very angry. But you know what makes me angry is when I'm hungry and there isn't a good alternative snack. When I say alternative, not one that's full of sugar, carbs, processed chemicals. I like to go for, especially during the middle of the afternoon, a midday square. You like midday squares?
Yeah, I love midday squares. And you got Lisa Schultz, who's got her cigars and some whiskey ready. So as we're talking about midday squares. But yes, midday squares are a delicious chocolate treat. They come in about 5 different flavors, and you can get 15% off of your order. It's a favorite for both Dan and I when you're working to stay physically fit. Oh, and I'll show you a video.
Everything shows it in the video.
All the talk and
telling you this story with not even the team.
Oh,
I don't think we have to blame.
Oh man, we're all over the place.
Preparing dinner for tonight, and then I thought, you know what though, I need a snack right now. And I don't want to blow it because I've been doing hard work in the gym and eating right. So I came outside, sit down, think about my choices, and then I got the following notification. Of course, I did what any sane person would do. I'm walking right on down to the delivery box to get my snacks. Crisis averted. So freaking good.
All right. Well, so I'm going to be putting in the comment section when I'm not talking. I have a second to do something else. I will put a link there at the top of the comments for you to receive 15% off your order of midday squares.
Yes, Ed. I have been meaning to call you, and I will. We've been a little tied up as of the past few weeks, but you are definitely on my list, and I will make it a priority this week. We're still talking about, believe it or not, the Coeur d'Alene massage parlor and the human trafficking taking place there, or the belief that human trafficking is taking place. But people have accused me of trying to sensationalize this. We've heard for the past 3 weeks. In fact, I got a kick out of it. Last week we had our guest who was not willing, I guess, or able to come on at the last minute. That same guest, just a short time after we were done with the broadcast, tweeted out a audio of Angelo Brunson calling the Coeur d'Alene Police Department's after-hours line and reporting. So it was important for us to know that he did, in fact, even though the police report said he did, but we heard him in his own words say that, hey, these local massage parlors, 5 of them, are involved with prostitution. So I'm glad we were able to double confirm that. But, some bigger players in the country that really know what's going on are saying the same thing. And they're specifically talking about Asian massage parlors. We're going to watch a video by border czar Tom Hammond, who has a wealth of experience. He was on the Sean Ryan show recently, and this is what he had to say specifically about Asian massage parlors and sex trafficking.
We're attacking trafficking really hard. The sad thing is that we're one of the biggest customers of it in the United States.
Yeah.
Either sex trafficking or forced labor trafficking. And some of the forced labor trafficking, they're never going to pay the fee off. When I was head of the office in Dallas, some of the Asian massage parlors that we investigated had, their passports were being kept from these women. They couldn't leave. They were locked in the facility, forced into prostitution and pay off smuggling fees, which they'll never pay off. So a lot of this, the trafficking, forced labor, and sex trafficking, the alien doesn't even know what they're getting into until they get here. They're forced into it to pay off the cartels. And it's like I say, these cartels are ruthless. They know where your family is. They'll threaten your family.
So borders are Tom Hammond, in his own words. We, as Americans, are some of the biggest buyers of this human trafficking. It takes place in Asian massage parlors in our own communities. These victims are coerced into working at these massage parlors. Their passports, their identification is taken away. So they have, no language. They can't communicate. They can't go anywhere. They came here thinking they were going to get a better life. And in the end, they were tricked and they're forced into prostitution. I'm going to say this one last time, and then we will be moving on. Anybody that supports Asian massage parlors right here in Kootenai County, knowing everything that we know about it, regardless of whether or not there have been convictions or charges, we know, everybody with a brain that has a moral compass knows, if you frequent any of these massage parlors, you're frequenting a place that most likely is involved in some pretty heinous things. And I hope that every night when your head hits the pillow, the last thing you think of is somebody that's being forced against their will. Whether or not you participate in a sex act, doesn't matter. If you're supporting them in any way, shape, or form, I hope the last thing you see when you close your eyes is the faces of those victims right here in our very own midst. So
we had some other talk of the town that's been going around.
we did.
Yeah.
Well, which one? There's lots of them.
Going around now. What we
Pennie
got?
Collinson?
Oh.
Is that the one you're going to go to? Because I had some news on that one.
Let's hear the news.
Well, as you know from last week's special guest, Linda Cook, there was a technicality that had occurred. And the judge for the Pennie Collinson defamation case against Sheriff Bob Norris, he had to kick the case because a bond was not purchased in time. And so it was more or less a technical problem that was required by statute. So he said, look, I'll entertain you posting a bond and refiling this correctly. The problem is that as of the time of this recording, Pennie has not been able to refile because the defendant, so Bob Norris's counsel, who's supposed to write that motion, is my understanding, for the judge to sign that it's dismissed, has not yet done that in over a week. It's a stalling tactic. You and I have seen this before in some of our dealings with court. So as soon as those that motion is signed, then Pennie is able to refile, Pennie Collinson. So a little bit of an update on that.
And for reference, I did put the link to last week's live stream. It's there archived on YouTube, and I put that in the comment section if you want to get to that entire episode and more information on that.
What controversies now were you talking about earlier?
No kings.
No kings. Yes, indeed. As we know.
Do we have kings in this country?
Yeah. So as Americans, do any of us recognize kings, rulers / nobles? Do we obey clergy as if they have authority over our lives like government? And my response has been for a very long time, absolutely not. As Americans, every last one of us is equal in value. We have different stations, different abilities, different talents, different financial status. But from a standpoint as an American, this is different than just about any other place in the world. We have no kings. I'd like to remind people of that every once in a while.
Yeah, and we're gonna see that Dan Wilson has been talking about this and made that statement quite some time ago. I do want to remind you, for those of you just joining us, because a lot of you have since the top of the hour, make sure to share this program to your page or profile, and then subscribe to the Idaho Sheriff over on X. We're getting called out for some of the chatter happening over on X, so you're certainly missing out if you're not following the Idaho Sheriff on X. And then subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's also the Idaho Sheriff. Now, here's something I want to remind everybody of, that Dan Wilson talking about no kings in this country.
Room down in my basement where I do a lot of my studying, I have a picture of the founders. It's a painting of the founders signing the Declaration of Independence. Well, I look up at that painting and I say, am I worthy to be in those men's presence? To do my part. Nothing spectacular. We don't have kings in this country. We're not subservient to anybody. We are equal under God. We have the rights to life, liberty, and property. The laws of nature and nature's God has spelled this out. Will you do your best with your lives and your fortunes and your sacred honor to be in a group like those men that did everything to give us this great life that we have, this great government? I need your help. I need you guys to help me spread the message of liberty without compromise. You see these on our shirts. That is the message. Liberty without compromise. God bless you all. Stay of strong courage, and may God bless Kootenai County and the United States. Thank you all.
So there you go. I mean, where are we going with this segment? We've got chatter around the community. I think people concerned that for our safety here, and what the plan is if protests are coming and if they become less than peaceful.
Well, as you're pulling up that website, No Kings, what you have going on right now is several events. There's a lot of people upset with the ICE raids, particularly down in Los Angeles. The governor is at kind of a stalemate against Trump. There's been threats of bringing in troops in order to, I think, the Marines to help conquer those protesters. And there's constitutional legality issues that are going back and forth, and the discussion as to whether or not this is a foreign invasion or whether or not this is a domestic disturbance. I tend to lean more towards, at this point, a domestic disturbance from constitutional standpoint. But you also, at the same time, have other things that are going on. So while you have people that are attacking ICE, and there's all these allegations of ICE doing things that they have not been doing, but they're being accused of, well, at the same time, you have other issues, such as you have Trump getting ready to have his big rally this weekend. His birthday celebration. He's going to have a military parade. I don't know. I don't even really know what is true and what isn't. But there's all sorts of people that are upset right now. And so if we go to the top of this website, we do know that there's a organization called No Kings. Still don't know entirely who it is that's behind it. Can't say. What I can tell you is that they appear, if we go back to that map just for a second, there's a map right down here. All these dots represent areas throughout the country that supposedly this organization is going to hold these protest rallies called No Kings to protest Donald Trump and what he is or is not doing in the country. We even have them right here locally in Kootenai County. To go a little bit deeper into this, I want to go to the top of the website here of this No Kings, just to kind of give you guys an idea who they are. I don't know that they're violent. I don't know that they're not paid. I don't know anything about them. If you look at the partner page, you're going to see that they're sponsored by a lot of extremely left-leaning organizations. I would not say this is a conservative group. So you look at ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, I believe, is one of them. You got Bernie Sanders. It goes on and on and on. But they are going to hold these rallies. They have some training sessions where if you want to get involved, you can get on a Zoom call. And what are they going to do this coming Saturday, the 14th? They're going to rally in all these cities across the country, and they're going to tell us how upset they are of Donald Trump acting like a king. This is kind of a tough website to navigate around while we're talking, but I want to go to the very bottom. What they're calling for is, and we can't really blow this up, but in essence, here in this yellow part,
I can read that. It says a core principle behind all No Kings events is a commitment to nonviolent action. We expect all participants to seek to de-escalate any potential confrontation with those who disagree with our values and to act lawfully at these events. Weapons of any kind, including those legally permitted, should not be brought to events. So that is the notation on their own website.
Now, for starters, we have heard that possibly one of the Waltons from Walmart is sponsoring this. There's no confirmation, so we don't know. You don't obviously throw something like this out without a lot of money coming in. No doubt that it's Democrats and left-leaning, whatever that spectrum is, no different than the right and the right spectrum. But they're definitely not conservative Republicans. What they're saying is that they want peaceful protests to uphold their rights and to voice their concerns, and no weapons and no violence. That's what they are saying. Now, the BC preacher, Quincy Franklin, who has been through some of the BLM and Antifa riots predating COVID and George Floyd's summer of 2020, maybe he's watching and he can voice in on this in the comments. But I don't know if Antifa and BLM put footers on their protests saying no violence, no weapons. Okay, so I'm just pointing out a couple differences. People were really upset with me back in, what was it, April, when we had some similar protests that were taking place down off of Appleway and Highway 95 right here in Coeur d'Alene. You know, how in the world can I be supporting these leftists? Because again, I'm a constitutional guy. I may not like what the leftists stand for and what the leftists envision, how they want our country to be run. But as long as they are not violent, they're peacefully protesting, I don't care whether or not they're getting paid to come in. As long as they are following the rules, then let them. I mean, there's really nothing there to debate. We can argue all day long about the legality of funding paid protesters. That's fine. I think we should. But
and anybody who has a counter message has the ability to do a counter protest peacefully.
Yeah.
Which is the same with Saturday.
In May 2020, the country was in complete chaos. We had the COVID lockdowns. You and I couldn't be closer than 6 feet by the CDC standards without being masked up, and gloved up and all that. Yeah.
To each other.
But yet you could protest George Floyd. You could burn cities to the ground. You didn't have to be masked up. You could walk side by side. We saw the destruction that took place in Minneapolis. We saw what took place in Portland, the over 100-night siege of the federal building. You and I have been down in Portland since that time, some 4+ years after the events. And the federal courthouse and justice center is still boarded up. We're not going to forget what took place. But in Coeur d'Alene, there was an event. And on the campaign trail, I talked about this quite often. There was a rumor started that there was a credible threat of Antifa and BLM after George Floyd, those protests that were taking place. They were rioting in Spokane, and that there was going to be another riot right downtown in Coeur d'Alene. Local guys rallied. Local residents, some from out of the area, showed up on our main street down in downtown Coeur d'Alene, armed to the teeth, rifles, handguns, all experiences, some in complete battle gear, others in blue jeans and sneakers. But for 2 days, the Patriots walked up and down the main street, Sherman, and kept law and order, kept all the violence at bay.
Yeah, people are reminiscing about that even today out on social channels, and they're resharing photos and basically stating, hey, this is how this went down the last time there were threats of.
But we're getting a little bit ahead of
protests.
ourselves.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit ahead of the story. I'm trying to set the stage. I still contend, and I don't really care if you agree with me or not. This is what I believe. I don't trust the FBI today any more than I did all those years ago. I think we have seen too much corruption come out of all of the big brands, Homeland Security, FBI, ATF, all of them. And I think that that was a prime opportunity for federal agents to look at all the patriots that were down there with their firearms and take pictures, as well as it's dangerous, right? And I talked about this, but now here we have 5 years later, this planned protest that's going to go all the way across the country. And once we have a local, well, it was leaked to me. This is how bad the ops are. The security plans, they don't have any operational security, because if I was slipped their battle commands, their orders to assemble, then everybody else has it. So I was given a heads up. We're going to go to our slide, and we're going to set up a little background. So the very first picture we're going to look at is a screenshot from North Idaho News. And they're talking about this No King's Day event, things that we just were discussing. Here's where I thought it was fascinating, because Mike Petum is good friends with Bob Norris, follows him everywhere. Petum, I believe, probably wrote this. Don't know that for certain, but he's got a little siren emoji, little flashing red light. And he's talking about hundreds of residents have reached out with concerns that outside agitators or paid protesters may try to disrupt the area. Some believe the heightened concern itself may be a tactic to draw attention to what would be otherwise a small, low-profile protest. Here's the key takeaway. After hundreds of concerned locals contacted us, we reached out to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and asked them to make a statement or validate any concerns. The Sheriff's Office has remained silent on the known planned protest. Now, that's pretty interesting because Bob Norris, candidate for sheriff and on the campaign reelection trail, liked to talk about the fact that he was down amongst all the patriots for the Gun to Lane event when everybody was armed.
So it seems odd that there wouldn't be some kind of statement or press release related to the event.
Well, he is the sitting sheriff right now, and leadership abhors a vacuum. People want to know. We'll go to the second slide here. As of an hour before this broadcast, I went to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office press media release page, and you can see there's absolutely nothing talking about this event coming up. So you have a sheriff that hasn't even bothered to come out and make one small statement about whether or not, hey, we have good, credible intel that there's going to be a group of violent actors coming out and we need to be prepared, or no, there's nothing to worry about, or here's what our plan is. Nothing. Now, of course, where this event is going to take place is in the city of Coeur d'Alene. And Bob kind of waffles back and forth where he has jurisdiction and doesn't have jurisdiction. So curious what he has to say now. But my advice to you, well, I'm going to talk about what my advice would be to my fellow Kootenai County citizens here after I share with you what brought all this up. So I was leaked these operational orders from what I believe is a local militia group. The first one is a potential call-up, so it looks like they're writing on a legal pad in good old pen and ink and then taking a picture and sending it out, so nobody can trace it back.
Is there whiteout on this paper?
There is.
Wow.
There's a full alert Saturday, June 14th. By the way, what's going on June 14th in downtown Coeur d'Alene? The Car Delane show. The big annual hot rod car, antique car show.
Yeah.
Interesting timing. Be prepared for possible call-up protests going on all over Idaho's against President Trump, ICE, and the Republican Party. Protests will be along Highway 95 in Coeur d'Alene, Sandpoint, Post Falls, Spokane. We will not let riots here. And CO must stand for Commanding Officer Badger and First Sergeant Leprechaun. So Badger and Leprechaun are the brains behind this operation. Don't know which one sent this out. It's a level 4 alert. Don't know what that means.
They know what it means. That's all that matters.
I know. The next day, this was shared. Idaho 2A Patriots.
So
again, I don't know that. Yeah, second. They're the fourth page.
All right.
We don't know whether or not this is the official Panhandle Patriots militia. I don't know. And just so we're clear, you have a right to belong to any militia that is above board. That is your right. I would fight for your right to do so. I said over. Maybe
you should say that again, because I think there's, I'm going to bring it back on screen here. We'll go back to that next page, but maybe just say that again, because I think there's confusion from some of the guys who are part of the militia that when you're speaking out on how the correct way is to have a militia in a county, that this is somehow being mistaken for, I mean, at one point you were an extreme militia guy being
that's what they were claiming. That's what they were claiming.
Others were claiming that you were, and now you've got militia guys that I think are seeing you as anti-militia. So just say it again for anybody.
You have a right to lawfully assemble together in your groups to be the citizen militia. You have that right. Whether you're conservative or whether you are left-wing, everybody has a right as long as they're operating within the confines of the law. I personally have never belonged to a militia because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are full of federal agents and confidential human sources. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Second of all, I question who your leadership is. I mean, I've seen some of these militia guys that, they're running around with their battle rattle. Actually, I'm not going to get up on that. That's going too far. You have a right to be part of the militia. I believe that the proper way to employ a militia would be under the sheriff and coordination and training together so that everybody understands the rules of engagement to maintain the rule of law through equal protection under the law, which means due process. So we're going to get back to this final deployment level 5 alert, calling all patriots. We will deploy Saturday, June 14th, rally point 0930 at the Apple Super One grocery store on the corner of Highway 54 and 95. Battle dress uniforms, sidearms, bring your web gear and rifle. Bring food and water and extra medical. Bring handcuffs if you have them. Bofang radios with their frequencies and their CB radio channel 35. They're going to deploy to Coeur d'Alene for riot control backup. More to follow at the rally point in Athol. This is not a drill. CO Badger, Commanding Officer Badger, and First Sergeant Leprechaun. Highway 95 and Appleway will be meeting with Toma and other groups. I don't know what that is. Maybe one of you know. Okay, so here we have somebody.
Are they going to have to change all their
Here's what I'm going to assume. You have a sheriff that is the person in charge of all security of the county, period. He's absent. He's said nothing. We know that a lot of the Panhandle Patriot guys seem to flock to Norris. They're with him at events. We know that he rubs shoulders with them. Good on him. That's great. But my question is so who decided that the militia needed to be mobilized? What gave the militia the right to go down to this event with rifles and with sidearms and medical gear, wear your kit if you have it, your tactical gear, bring handcuffs, and you're going to be backup riot control. So my question is, has the local militia been training with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office riot control? Or maybe the Coeur d'Alene Police, Idaho State, Post Falls, Rathdrum, Spirit Lake? So what gives these guys the right? I mean, everybody has the right to do what they want as long as it's within the confines of the law, but who do you suppose asked them to come down and provide backup riot control? And my question is, those that are part of this group, what kind of training do you have? Who all is in your group? And what happens when you are in your location with your rifles and your firearms and your show of force? If in fact these protesters from No Kings turns violent, what happens when somebody similar to January 6th, when the feds were embedded in all their different organizations, decides to incite some violence? What are you guys going to do then? How are you going to know whether somebody is part of your group or an agitator that's sent and you hear that shot round the world? This is dangerous. And if I were sheriff right now, I would be calling for the leaders. I'd be transparent. I would share information, but I would say, look, unless we have credible information, and if we have credible information, why is Norris sharing it with a select few and not the rest of us? What has Norris done to train with these groups? I mean, everybody, when I was in law enforcement, we trained together as a group so that we understood how each other operated. This is the type of event where somebody that lacks discipline, that lacks understanding, that lacks self-control does something stupid and puts us on the map. Now, if we were to hear about these riots and all of a sudden chaos erupted, no patriots were down there, but a big attack took place in Coeur d'Alene. The sheriff and his command post and whoever other agencies he has working with him wants to call on volunteers to help. That's great. But who's the incident commander? Is it Badger?
Or Leprechaun?
Or a Leprechaun?
I think Matt has an arguable point, and I want you to respond to this. They have the right. So when we're talking about these leaked documents and the local militia kind of like getting ready to go, they have the right to bear arms and protect their city and county. It's called the Constitution. And then he adds that and says the same thing happened in 2020 and nothing bad happened. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I want to respond.
Sure.
What's your
You can also
argument?
drive your vehicle around 100 miles an hour recklessly without a seatbelt and never get into a crash. Just because one time something didn't happen does not mean that the next time it will. And just like with the protests that have taken place around the country, there are those that will be looking for an opportunity to put Kootenai County on a map, to show the world that Kootenai County is the racist, bigoted county that the world has supposedly said we have been for all these years once we got rid of the Aryan nations back 20 plus years ago. I think this is one of those instances where a sheriff with any kind of leadership would have been way in front of this, saying, look, guys, I understand this is what you guys want to do, and it's your right to protect your city. But what happens when things go sideways? How do you know who foe is from friend? How does law enforcement know whether or not you're foe or friend? You are setting up a dangerous event that I don't believe right now, based on the information that has been shared, that it's warranted. Don't get me wrong. We absolutely have the right to defend ourselves and our homeland. And this is part of the reason why I was pushing for a citizens posse so hard if I'd been sheriff. Because then you bring vetted volunteers together, you train them according to their skill level, and if it comes down to physically arming guys to protect your county, those are guys that have been vetted and you understand their capability and their skills, their safety matrix, and you deploy people with reasonableness, former law enforcement, former military, people that have a proven record of being in these types of situations to assist with certain rules of engagement, but not to be lawless and to do whatever you want. I mean, so what happens down there? Again, it said that they're going to be backups for riot control. Well, who's asked you? I'd love to know who has asked these Second Amendment guys.
Okay, but Matt says, again, I think this is a good point. It's about prevention, because I was thinking this to push this even further with you. If showing up armed is really more about creating a presence and it's prevention, and so protesters know that there will be armed, he says, quote, opposition. So the idea is that then nothing bad happens. But I think what you're proposing,
presence and deterrence. Yeah. In a perfect world, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But how well do you know that those that are among? What if you have somebody in there that is a disruptor that's not part of your group and pops off some rounds, does something stupid? What's your threshold as far as at what point you engage? If you're looking just to be a presence, okay. My question is, why is your local law enforcement not doing its job by being the presence that they should be? Why has there been no call for Idaho State Patrol and other agencies to come in and assist? If there's truly a credible threat, and your law enforcement with the fusion centers and all the intel sharing that they have should 100% have a very good idea as to what is going to take place this weekend. Think about it. Chief White, Captain Hager, Coeur d'Alene, the Coeur d'Alene show, that's a huge, draws in thousands upon thousands of people over 2 days to downtown Coeur d'Alene. You don't think that they would be extremely concerned if they have thousands of people that are downtown at this event? If they had good intel that something was going to go awry? I mean, look, trust but verify, but I mean, you guys are acting as if law enforcement that gets paid to do the work that they're supposed to here locally, which is secure our county and our cities, is asleep at the wheel. And until I hear otherwise from Bob Norris or from Chief White or the other agencies, I'm not going to be concerned that those that are showing up really have the intent to destroy and riot and burn things down. Now, if it gets to the point where they decide to come in and try to burn things down, and in the event that our own local law enforcement is not able to deal with it, then do whatever the sheriff says that he needs help with. But until that time, I think it's irresponsible. So you're going to come down with long arms, and you're going to be right there on 95. I mean, what are you going to do with them? You're going to start shooting people if they pick up bricks and are throwing them at property? I mean, what are you going to do? What do you know from a lawful standpoint that you have the lawful right to protect with firearms when it comes to rules of engagement? So yeah.
I think because it hasn't happened, then it's perceived that really you're making a problem where there is none. They're going down just to be a presence, meaning it isn't, nothing bad then will happen. But because we haven't been in that scenario, it's not a problem till it's a problem. And
yeah, I mean, what have these guys been training? Who is this a small unit that has trained in riot control for years and understand how to best effectively work as a unit in controlling a riot situation? Or is this a bunch of guys like some of you? I'm going to piss you off. There's a lot of you militia guys that are the most out of shape, frumpy dudes I've seen in my entire life. And you want to talk how tough you are and run around with your rifles and your black guns and, you know, all the nomenclature, but you can't even run a mile and a half in under 20 minutes. But I know you're a good trigger puller, right? I mean, part of the responsibility for being in these groups is to be the best that you can be. So what are you doing to train? Have you trained with the sheriff's department? If not, why not? I know I'm going to piss a lot of you guys off, and that's kind of why I'm doing it. If you're dumb enough to leak your ops plan out to the world for everyone to see, that tells me you probably aren't as high speed as what you really think you are. And more likely than not, that's what's going to lead to an event that none of us wants to see happen. Wait for law enforcement locally to guide if and when they need backup volunteers. Otherwise, show up with yourselves, but you don't have to come down dressed like you came out of a 511 store.
Is that about all you have to say on that?
That's about all I got to say. Well,
I think, yeah. You had a lot of people hopping on to see what it was, what exactly it was going to come out of your mouth, Wilson.
I'm certain we'll have to do follow-ups because people will misquote and misunderstand. And
I'm sure they will.
But
you'll have to clarify
it is
something.
what it is.
Matt Kepster is kind of an interesting point. There isn't enough law enforcement to contain an all-out riot. And he wants to know how many. Well, it's not a question.
Well, I mean,
how many law enforcement does Kootenai have altogether? So it's too late if we have to wait for the sheriff.
So are you? What's your game plan, Matt? You, instead of asking me these questions, you obviously have a game plan and a scenario. Why don't you share with us what your scenario is? We're going to go ahead and go into our next segment. But while you're articulating what this case would look like if you were involved, you go ahead and articulate it out, and we'll go back and read it. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of ground to cover, though. This next segment's about 40 minutes, so get your popcorn, get settled in.
And we are still here live, even while we are just now launching this segment. We're still here with you live to respond to comments, so keep them coming.
Machines. I think we can look straight in the eye of Mark Zuckerberg and all these left-wing groups.
I have been pushing this message of a diverse approach to voting and all of the above. And I firmly believe, I'm going to say this, if we wait to vote on one day in November 2024, then Joe Biden is getting reelected. And everything that you're seeing right now is only going to be exacerbated.
That means in addition to Election Day, early in-person voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, and where legal and applicable, ballot harvesting.
Because it's not about the machines, it's about bad individuals in the system
that infiltrated the offices with $500 million, and that's why Joe Biden won.
I've now said, I don't care about the machine. So now all those rules went right out the door.
And then we have this video.
In my report to everyone, I mentioned that there is a statistical impossibility in when the first ballots were reported because they matched the final results by less than 0.25% for all three of the trustee elections and only the trustee elections. That cannot possibly have happened by chance. It is impossible. And I think that this needs to not be ignored. And I am very disappointed that there is no elected officials who are standing up for this and asking these questions. I'm very disappointed that there is nobody from KCRCC who is standing up and asking these questions. It should not be left to a regular citizen with absolutely no backing. If the problem, I believe, is if the possibility of fraud is acknowledged, it opens up an enormous can of worms for everybody in Kootenai County. And I understand why nobody wants to face it. but it is pure cowardice to not ask the questions. And that is just questions regarding the extreme coincidence of the first reporting matching the final reportings exactly. The other thing that really needs to be explained is there's a very large, very unusual difference between the early and E-Day voting, which should not be there with such an enormous sample of early voting. And there's a great misunderstanding. People don't understand the statistics, so they have all these excuses about, well, it was a nonpartisan race. That explains why it was much closer than the partisan race, but it doesn't explain why the early voting was so different from the election day voting. And there is no known explanation for that. So these are two big, huge flags. You guys have just canvassed. Nobody's mentioned this. The election officials haven't mentioned it. The commissioners haven't mentioned it. There is no party representatives mentioning it. It's a very serious problem, and I do not appreciate nobody else stepping up. I'm afraid I can't let this drop. I wish I could. It's not something I really want to fight, but we just can't ignore this. If we don't have integrity in our systems, our election systems, we don't have a democracy. I believe President Trump will help address this.
What are you alleging happened? What are you alleging? I mean, you're saying that there was something unusual, but what are you alleging?
My understanding, could you clarify this, is that there was an ESS technician in the polling?
Yes.
Okay. It is very easy to do machine.
You realize he never touched that EMS computer. It was ASA and a team of 3 that were adjudicating. ASA was the one uploading the results.
You know what?
Not Jay.
I don't know what was there, but I think you guys owe the people of Kootenai County a written explanation of exactly what happened. I know I've been told, why don't you go talk to Jennifer, as if it's a private matter. It's not a private matter. Your response.
He never came to me.
No.
Okay, I'm going to stop. Hold on.
Needs
Stop.
to be directed to
right now.
People of Kootenai County, not
I'm
me.
responding to you right
Okay.
now.
Okay. So we're going to be done.
Election integrity. For many of you, after the 2020 election, that term started to become common course in your daily discussions, as we heard all sorts of different scenarios how the vote was stolen in 2020. And I think that in the years since that time, it has been conclusive that throughout the entire country, elections have not been what they're supposed to be. They have not been secure. You can follow many experts all over the country that have voiced their concerns. In this last clip, we saw a local activist, in a good way, a very smart individual by the name of Teresa Roth, who was testifying before the Board of County Commissioners right after the November 2024 election right here in Kootenai County. And Teresa was on fire. What was she on fire about? Well, Teresa had written a letter to the Board of County Commissioners and other elected officials and candidates in the 2024 election. We're going to show this group of emails and letters that she sent out, just to go over them real quick. She contends that she knows that election integrity is a contentious issue. She sent this out November 13th to not only Bruce Matari, Leslie Duncan, Bill Brooks, who are county commissioners, or Bill Brooks was during that time frame, as well as the county clerk, head of elections, Jennifer Locke. And she goes on to say that it's a very contentious issue. She would like there to be constructive resolution. She's much less interested in raking people over the coals and getting into what will certainly be a very contentious debate. They're using an unfortunate situation to get more Kootenai County leaders to acknowledge election integrity as a serious issue that must be addressed. It's imperative that Kootenai County citizens have faith in their elections. She has written an open letter to Kootenai County Republican leaders and candidates, and then she goes on to present the letter that she wrote to various officials. And she talks about the fact that this open letter to the candidates and of the recent election, as well as elections office and county commissioners, that she's been researching election integrity for several years, and an EECS with experience, which is a electrical engineer, computer scientist with experience in the field of microprocessors and data processing. She contends that blatant fraud surrounding this year's North Idaho College trustee elections, which appears to involve voting machines and some questionable activities within election office. Now, she goes on and she shows some of the evidence that she wanted for the rest of the elected officials to look at. And they revolved around 3 different candidates for North Idaho College Trustee Board, whose preliminary results at the very conclusion of election night, when they start counting ballots, was that within 0.25% of the final outcome some 10, 11 hours later. You saw in that video, it was pretty contentious, but who is this hair-raising expert that we have in studio today? None other than Teresa Roth. Teresa, thank you so much for being here. What's a little background on Teresa?
Teresa is an independent researcher. She's also a founding member of something that you may have seen around in Kootenai County recently called Eye on Elections. This is a nonpartisan grassroots group of Idaho voters who are working to promote transparency and citizen verification of elections. Idaho elections are currently controlled by electronic voting systems that are susceptible to rigging. Elections need to be put back in the hands of the citizens. Eye on Elections is a citizens movement working to change our election systems. And then I like this. It says, Idaho's political establishment won't fix a problem they helped create. It's up to us. Please join. And I know that Teresa is going to talk to us more about that.
Now, I've known Teresa for 20 years. We reconnected right before I ran for Kootenai County Sheriff in 2024. She is a mother of 5, homeschooling mom. We had kids in homeschool co-op together a long time ago, and a grandmother of how many? 9. So lots and lots of family members there, and extended families of David and Teresa. Teresa, you have a background in electrical engineering, a degree.
Yes, I do.
And computer science, which means you are a pretty intelligent individual. Anybody that has debated Teresa on any of the various social media platforms locally knows that she's extremely tenacious and ferocious, and you would probably better off to not debate her too hard if you know it's good for you, because she knows her facts. Teresa, welcome to our segment today. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So you have a lot that you have to say. We're going to be brief because this is a very large topic, but tell us a little bit about, how did you discover this fraud? You've been watching elections for several years, but what was it that made you say there's fraud going on in Kootenai County elections?
Well, I think that a lot of what was explained in the video, the technical details, I won't go into the technical details, more the how did it come up? I've been involved, I'm mostly involved in sort of a Stop Smart Cities type, anti-surveillance, anti-building up these, high density, get everybody packed, Agenda 21 stuff, right? So, and it has many aspects. So one of the things, of course, is election. I've been following it for about 3 years, and I looked into a couple other fraudulent elections that were mostly, the typical thing is they use absentee ballot, skewing absentee ballots to come in absolutely ridiculously liberal. And I know that's fake, but how do you prove it? Well, if I can't really prove something, even if I know it's true, I can't really bring it up, because if I don't really have the, no matter how obvious it is, if somebody can deny it credibly, if somebody can look you in the eye and say, boy, I just really do believe that 75% of Hayden absentee voters, voted for the Rhino, you can't, argue with that. Sure. If I can't argue with facts, I don't want to engage.
Sure.
So I did, I've known that there's going to be fraud. The question is there fraud you can prove? And tabulator fraud is very, very serious because it's invisible.
But what is the tabulator fraud? What does that mean to the
Okay.
person out there that says, okay, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're saying 1 second that it's all in the absentee ballots, but then you're saying that you can't prove it without facts. Tell us what is tabulator fraud?
Okay. The way Kootenai's system works is, they do meticulous, I've talked to election people, they do a meticulous job of tracking every ballot. They check the signatures and all this sort of stuff. But for all of the care and they do to make sure all the ballots are accounted for, the ballots go into an electronic machine, and outside of the electronic machine come the results and the scanned ballot images.
Okay, so if I do, because in Kootenai County, if I'm not voting absentee, well, I guess it's probably absentee as well. We're not poking holes. We're not doing the chads. We're not touching a touch screen. We get an actual paper ballot and we fill in the ovals.
Correct.
I take that up to the election official in a folder. They put it into a secure locked box. Those ballots then are accumulated. They are taken back to the election center, opened up in front of witnesses, and fed into basically a big scanning copy machine.
It's a lot more than a scanning copy machine.
Tell us more about that.
And that, I've written articles about this. The big, huge problem with our election machines is that they scan and produce ballot images and they tabulate. Those are two...
Tabulate mean they count the votes for the candidates.
Those are two completely separate functions. And it's crazy. It's obviously irresponsible to put the problem of basically taking pictures of the ballots and counting the ballots in the same machine. Because what that does, because computers can all be hacked. It's very easy to hack a computer, and anybody can do it. No, that's not true. I don't want to say everybody can do it. But
motivated individuals with the ability.
Motivated individuals can do it. And the software that does the cheating is baked in the cake, and you program the every time you do a new election, you have to program the machine to read those particular ballots. So the problem we have is we've got all these ballots, and they're all paper ballots. They're in boxes. They go into the tabulator, and out come the ballot images, and out come the results. Nobody ever actually looks at
Wait a second. You mean after the machines scan it through and they collect the image, almost like taking a screenshot on your phone.
Yeah.
It also then tabulates what votes go for who.
Right.
So that has a common running tally. But you're saying then no humans literally are looking at the ballots.
Nobody ever sees your ballot.
That sounds like, though, that we live in the modern times and we need that efficiency, right? I mean,
No.
nobody does things by paper anymore. So why do you think that that's bad?
Because it's a prescription to cheat. And the problem is because the problem is it's creating images, and you can create false images with a computer. So if you put in 100 ballots and you have 100 ballot images coming out and the results of that coming out, I guarantee you that the results will match the ballot images. But the ballot images might not match the paper.
Right.
And nobody checks that. Now, obviously they do logic and they do controlled situations where they control, they know that they're going to have a correct result. So, but in terms of a big giant election, at best they do spot checking on particular precincts, because a lot of times they don't even do that. So we just do all this care for making sure we're handling the ballots correctly and locking the ballots and making sure nobody touches the ballots and nobody sees the ballots and nobody does anything to the ballots. And we basically just feed them into a machine that spits out whatever they want. And what I loved about your introductory video, because you saved me the trouble of making a big point, is there's all these other types of fraud, and there's all these other excuses for why. I'm just going to talk about Idaho because I'm not going to go into a national. Now, first of all, the fraud software that that runs on Idaho machines is national. I mean, it's the same fraud software, but every state has its own particular setup, and it also has its own narrative of why conservatives lose in that particular state. It's either a swing state where the narrative is, oh, it's really, really, really close. Well, nothing's close in Idaho. Idaho is like overwhelmingly MAGA conservative. MAGA conservatives should be in every political office, in every city, in every legislative district. It should be 70-20 and not even that, because we're so overwhelming conservative that there's no reason we shouldn't be having very conservative everything. So we have different narratives of like, oh, it's the Soros money. We just can't, the Soros money's coming in, and the Democrats are getting really organized, and they're registering as Republicans so they can flip the Republican primary, and it was just a low turnout election, and not enough Republicans voted. Any excuse at all. Oh, and absentee, of course, is huge. It's all the absentees are potentially corrupt. Absentees are potentially skewed liberal. So you're looking at anything except the machine.
Well, wait a second though. People here would say in Kootenai County, you're nuts, because all of our super conservative MAGA electeds got reelected. So they would say, I don't know what you're talking about. There can't be any election issues in Kootenai County because overwhelmingly we have conservative elected. So how do you answer that?
Well, is Coeur d'Alene really liberal?
The city itself? The voters in the city.
Have you done the analysis?
Oh, so now you're saying the countywide officials are MAGA, but the city of Coeur d'Alene has more liberal leaning
no, she's quite, before Teresa digs into that, because I don't think that is exactly what she was saying, but we're here with Teresa Roth, founding member of eyeonelections.org, and I want to encourage you to head over to that website, eyeonelections.org, where you can get a lot more in-depth information. There's a blog there, articles, solutions. Some people say, well, why is this person coming in and bringing up a problem when you don't have a solution? But she does. So I want you to respond to what Dan was saying. Or you said, is Coeur d'Alene really liberal? You said, is it though? What were you going to say about that?
Well, I'm going to talk about this more on Saturday, but think about it. Is Boise really liberal enough to elect a flaming left wing? I mean, it's crazy. If you look at the demographics of Boise, they are not liberal. If you do a precinct by precinct analysis of Coeur d'Alene, there is a very liberal core, most south of the freeway. Downtown is, but even in downtown, Trump won. He just didn't win by the huge margins.
So what you're saying is we're led to believe that Coeur d'Alene proper controls some things politically, and we write it off to, well, they're a liberal faction of North Idaho. But you're saying if you look at data and statistics, that it really isn't the case.
No, Coeur d'Alene should, according to statistics and even voting records, Coeur d'Alene should be easy for true MAGA conservatives.
It should trend conservative.
Yes. But I do want to make a distinction between MAGA conservatives and sort of establishment conservatives. And we'll just, use those terms. Yeah. So there's no problem at all for when there's establishment conservatives running for something. Why there's, the only time they would bother cheating is if there's actually a true uncontrolled MAGA conservative, and so the point was, in this instance, there's many conservatives. It turns out the KCRCC NIC candidates happened to be very, they won by, they got a large majority of the early voting. And then they mysteriously, dropped their support to 50% or lower in the election day voting. And there's no explanation for that. So that shows you that they don't cheat on every election, and there's things you don't need to steal a election from a globalist.
Right.
So if they've already got a globalist in power or a controlled Republican in power, they don't need to steal that. But they will steal the positions they really need. And again, in the legislature, the way it works, it's complicated. I'm kind of getting off track here, but they can allow up to 40% of true conservative legislators. They just have to have enough establishment rhinos in the system to just wash out any really critical legislation.
Sure.
So part of the fraud is keeping up the appearances.
So really what we've got though here in Kootenai County or the state of Idaho is we have state contracts with national election providers. So they provide the machines and the software. The software is proprietary. That means that nobody outside of these firms, these companies, can get in on the back end and really find out how it works, right? So the assumption is that if company A that's providing us the equipment and software says it's working, we have to believe that, right? Because there's no way for any other person to go in there and determine without physically looking at the ballot. So if we were to do a recount right now, they use the same machines.
Exactly.
It would come back with the same results. And really the only way around to determine that would be to pull all of the hand votes and count them by hand and compare it.
Which they don't do. I mean, that's not in Idaho code.
Right.
They talk about what is a hand count, and it's a very small fraction of ballots that they count from a precinct. And then all they do is run those through the machine to make sure that matches this small fraction of a hand. There is no such thing as an actual hand
Just
count.
trying to keep, a little bit. So I know, because this is such a broad conversation, we don't want to lose everybody and kind of trying to stay on track. But I just want to kind of to say, so it's your belief, not necessarily ours, because I just don't know, but your belief is that potentially somebody, we don't know who, and we're going to talk about specifically the race that caused you to go, something's not right. We're going to dive into this real quick here, but you're not contending that Kootenai County officials themselves were part of a steal or a change, or anything. Just to make certain those that are watching, and for any kind of libelous or defamation claims, these are things that we're working and we're asking questions of things that don't make sense. We're not alleging that somebody committed a crime.
Yeah, in fact, I'd like to clarify that even more. The tabulator fraud absolutely almost cannot be done by local officials. The way you do tabulator, the thing that another thing that kind of put my hair on fire about this, and this is just something Kootenai County people should know, but Kootenai County has had these machines in place in different forms for 20 years.
And since what, 06, 07?
Yes. And in every single election up to, I think, the most recently one, because I complained about it, they didn't do it. They have brought in from Omaha a consultant in order to run their tabulators.
Not only one, but two. The last election, there was two. Remember, there was a contractor and the rep. So
one of them was a local contractor, and he does, again, like we asked for, okay, well, what version of software are you running and everything? And, I don't want to be, the election officials are just doing things the way they've always done it. And they say, well, we signed a contract for somebody to support, so we don't
they
really
literally physically have a consultant that the county pays for from the firm that manages or provides the software and the equipment to be there on location, allegedly, in case there's any problems with the machines. They're supposed to be able to troubleshoot them and to get them back online to make certain no disruptions.
They have two different. One, the one that comes in from Omaha runs the tabulators. The one that's local is there for technical. If something breaks down and needs to be fixed, because there are different skill sets. But again, if the the person who's, maintaining the thing gives a software update. They don't necessarily, I mean,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody can actually know what the consultants are doing. Again, not alleging that somebody's done something fraudulently or illegal, but we're asking, how do we police the people that are entrusted with some pretty big, what would you say, pretty big tasks, pretty big jobs without any kind of oversight? There's nobody from the community that can come in and actually look at it and say, yeah, this is on the up and up.
I kind of knew before going into this that there was problems, and it was one thing after another. I was shocked at how obvious it was that fraud was a possibility, and so many options for fraud. But just the fact that they've been having for every election a technician or a consultant from out of state running them from the manufacturer. If there's any back doors, if there's any secret codes, if there's any switches that need to be set, if there was any, because all software has back doors. All
Even though they tell us it
passcodes.
Doesn't, we know that it does.
Right. And so if anybody would know how to rig the system and know what has to be done, it would obviously be somebody associated directly with machine.
Right.
And that's the person who's been running, that's been going on.
They're the gatekeepers, so to speak.
20 years in Kootenai County. And it's not the election officials. It's not, they're just doing their job. They're following their law. But the other point that you made is about the recounts. And that's a really good one, because people say, well, prove it then by doing a recount.
Yeah.
It isn't that it's an option to do only 5% counted and 95% with the machine. It is mandatory in code. I asked Jennifer Locke if she could do just let's do a manual recount. And she said, no, we have to follow the law. Following the law on a recount means counting 95% of the ballots on the exact same machine that you are suspicious of. There's no transparency. There's no visibility.
Yeah.
There's no way to verify this. Now, that, just because something's completely transparent and impossible to verify doesn't prove fraud.
Right.
It just proves opportunity for fraud. And I would say the opportunity for fraud in Kootenai County is wildly overwhelming. And that's just true. It's really true nationally.
We're going to show this slide real quick, because this is such a longer than a 30-minute segment.
Yeah,
we're already close to our 30 minutes. But we don't want to leave people in the dark saying, okay, well, we've just said a whole bunch of stuff. What was it that lit your hair on fire?
Yeah, I want to get back to that. Is this the one you had up?
Let's show this. This was an example in the letter that you sent out to the various elected officials, and it revolved around the North Idaho College trustee race. There was 3 positions open. There were 3 what we would call super conservative candidates, and then 3 that were called the North Idaho more liberal Republican candidates.
Right.
And so what we're going with here is they kind of buck the trends of the rest of the county. Kind of back what we were talking about. All the real conservative candidates were reelected or elected, except for this contentious North Idaho College race where, well, walk us through. Let's show that slide and just look at the differences in the numbers. So on the left-hand side of this column, you're talking about the initial results. So these initial results are really close to when election ends and they begin counting the first initial returns, correct?
Correct. And they were it was very irregular, and I was very disturbed.
What does that mean, irregular?
Well, what I expected to see for the first results were just the early results, not and then shortly after the absentee votes.
Absentee ballots counted typically first because they've already had them in.
Earlier is counted first.
Oh, early. So early voting before the day of election, people that walk in at the election office, they start tallying those first, and then the absentee, and normally they run the different numbers by total absentee ballots, total early voting, correct?
Correct.
All right.
And so normally you see that broken out. You see right away what the absentee what the early votes were and the absentee votes. And it's very easy to tell from just those two data how the election's going to go, because there's always, the absentee votes are always super slanted in the, I'm just going to call it the liberal direction. So I thought I'd be able to tell what was going on with all these elections by just looking at the first release, and then I could go to bed. Instead of breaking out the early voting, they basically took the early voting and they added it to about 2/3 of the absentee voting, which is very unusual. They combined them. And then they came out with these numbers, but I couldn't break out what the early votes were from that. So so I did later find out, but the point is, I think they hid the early
Hold on a
vote.
second though.
Yeah.
But because this is part that's really important for this conversation, the first numbers that they put out, it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 or 10,000, the percentage of the votes cast that went to these particular candidates ended up being identical within the 0.25% of the final numbers.
Identical.
Yeah.
And I was, I should explain right away then. I'm going to answer that question. The way the fraud algorithms work is they have a set point. And so what they do is they ratchet up the guy they want to win with absentee votes so that he's well above 50%. And then they control the election day voting so that it ramps down slowly and just hits that goal. And 52 is always pretty suspicious because it's a
1+.
It's a good, it's like, it's big enough so that you don't want to do a recount. If it was like, if you're winning by 0.5%, then you're going to do a recount. But 2%, that's pretty decisive. So people just give up and throw up their hands. So but when I first saw the numbers, I knew something was up, not just in this election, but I didn't know which elections they were stealing. But I'm going, why aren't they showing the early votes? Because the early votes should be telling us a whole lot.
I don't think we got any of the results back until like 10:30 at night.
Right.
It was extremely for a process where we scan them in and it's supposed to be, how many hundreds per minute.
The early votes were available at 8:00. There's no reason that they shouldn't just show those right away. Those should have shown up at 9:00. Those would have been the first thing you see.
So wait a second, though. Going back, though, we're already stating that we don't believe that there was anything nefarious done by any of the election officials that were working on it. But why did it take them so long then, do you believe?
Okay, if you saw the video at the canvassing room, I was asking that question. It's like, why didn't you post this?
Because basically 2 hours after voting polls are closed, we're not even getting initial early results back in.
No, and I don't know who made that decision or why.
It's not typical. Normally we get within the hour, they start trickling in.
There's no reason to hold them off.
Right.
Unless you don't want people to see that the KCRCC candidates were winning by 60-40 or 59-41 in the early voting, which they were.
So at the conclusion, when the election was called, bucking against the trend of the rest of the county, the more liberal Republicans pulled the election away, not only by their numbers from the initial returns, not very more than 0.25%, which is nothing, but also the spread was 8% between these candidates and the conservative candidates. And it doesn't compute anywhere else across the entire election spectrum. So you started seeing these anomalies. You start taking the data that's available for all citizens to download, or you requested it through the elections office, and you started, because of your background in computer science and electrical engineering, started running statistics on things, and you came to the conclusion that it statistically was not possible for the early returns and the final results to be within 0.25% for each of those candidates.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, there's two different statistical things. So So anyway, I have videos made that we can link to.
And we're going to talk. We're going to tell people where those are.
Yeah, because this is something, when you start getting into the numbers, you lose a lot of people. So it has to be just done separately. But yeah, so I have videos that that show the charts and the percentage and statistics and everything.
But you're basically blown off. You gave this letter to the elected officials. You came and testified, or publicly spoke, rather, gave public
Which we saw
testimony
there at the beginning of the segment.
And what was the response from those that you sent out, our elected officials in the community?
Absolute silence. And it's been absolute silence ever since. They will not, I was in very good standing in a previous, a time with,
so 8
with
months,
these people.
you still haven't had any response.
Election fraud is, if you acknowledge election fraud, especially at a particular tabulator fraud, electronic fraud, that is a huge can of worms. I cannot explain what it is Armageddon.
Right.
Because if you acknowledge that those machines can or have ever been programmed to favor one set of candidates, what we already, you mentioned before, you can use the tabulator to skew the absentee votes too. We see these huge skews in absentee votes. That doesn't mean that it was really there.
Right.
So you can get your, if the machines are able to just make whatever results they want, which they are, you can definitely program to do that. But everybody has to pretend that, we're protecting your ballot, you're protecting your ballot, they're under lock and key.
While they're leaving the back door open.
Yeah. The ballot is protected, guys.
Yeah.
What's not protected is your
software that's interpreting
it.
The
software that's interpreting it is completely gone rogue. And so, but if you acknowledge it, if anybody acknowledges it, especially an elected official or a party member, it opens up such a big can of worms that they can't. It's like letting your finger out of the dike.
And just
they have to be quiet about this.
To be clear, so the KCRCC, who I'm constantly criticizing, I do not like the way that the KCRCC is operating right now. That's no secret, but their candidates lost.
Their candidates
lost by a huge margin at 8% between the two, correct?
Their candidates actually won, but they allowed their candidates' election to be stolen.
That's what you're contending.
I'm totally contending.
That is yours, because I don't know.
Yes.
But just to be clear, this wasn't a deal where you're just coming in and saying, well, I don't like the results. You put the question to not only elected officials, you also took it to the head of the chairman of the Kootenai Republican Central Committee, Brent Reagan, and to the secretary. No response. They don't care. They are burying their head in the sand.
Correct.
Let me ask you this. Were you looking at this because Dan Wilson told you that I didn't like the outcome of my election, therefore I commissioned you to do this?
No, in fact, I think I told you a couple days before. I don't love the way your numbers look, but I'm just going to dump them entirely because the NIC thing is way more interesting, and I can't prove anything with your numbers, and these numbers are screaming fraud.
Yeah.
So I kind of told you right off. It's like we're dropping the. I'm not saying.
To be clear, we didn't create this whole narrative. You saw a problem, and as a result, with your continual research, you've published many videos where you walk people through the nuts and bolts on how you believe this occurred and the vulnerabilities. And you have brought together a team that has come up with what you believe are solutions that will be allowed under current state law in order to be able to ensure that we have integrous elections.
Correct.
And you're going to have an event this coming Saturday. It's Eyes on Election at the, let me make sure I've got right, the Empowered Hearts Ministry, right on the corner of Celtis and Greens Ferry in Post Falls, 10 a.m.?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Should be done by 11:30 at the latest.
You can go to Eyes. Let's throw that website up there again so we can make sure.
It's eyeonelections.org, and I'll do a screen share while you guys continue talking.
We're going to have you back because we've only barely scratched the surface.
We've only scratched the surface.
But really, I would encourage people in Kootenai County and wherever you are to look at what Teresa has produced and then weigh it against what you know to be true and start asking the question. does Teresa have a point to what she's saying? She does have the credentials. I mean, electrical engineering and computer science, you're not just somebody that is an amateur statistician on the side.
No.
So we really appreciate the fact that you have been watching this, that you have decided to take it on. I know you've made enemies.
One or two.
Yeah, one or two. But you're a strong individual, and we greatly appreciate you coming on Liberty Without Compromise to discuss this. And we're going to be anxiously watching how your organization progresses in the months to come, and with the ultimate goal to secure all of our elections right here, not only in this county, but in our region and across our country.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
That was Teresa Roth, Eye on Elections. And that was an interesting segment. Lots said there. Now, I don't pretend that I agree with everything that Teresa says. Frankly, she's like a rocket scientist. She's way above my understanding. Yeah, I'll admit it. I'm a simpleton. But the things that I did grasp were curious to me. And part of Liberty Without Compromise is that we discuss things that are not in an echo chamber, which means we do let people have their voice to say what they believe, what they're working on, whether we agree with it or not. I want to specifically reiterate, we, myself and Donna, are not alleging that anybody in Kootenai County, either at the county level, elected officials, or employees, have done anything nefarious, nor are we indicating that it's our belief that the software company that provides the machines and the software for our voting has done anything illegal as well. But trust but verify is the term I think that we like to throw around a lot. I was just talking with a good friend of mine the other day about that. And it is up to us. If we want to preserve liberty, you don't take anything for granted. And if somebody comes up and says, hey, I've got a good argument as to why I don't think things look right, they don't smell right, then we need to have people to trace it down and to see whether or not at the conclusion there's anything there or not. Some of us are not experts in these areas. We rely on others. Everybody has a skill and a talent. Now, Ed and Matt were going back and forth in the comments, both making great points. I do want to also make another clarification. For the conversation, we were talking about conservatives versus not conservatives. Teresa's contention is if it's not a KCRCC candidate, i.e. a North Idaho Republican, that means that they are liberals or rhinos. Rhinos is thrown around quite a bit. We've talked about that quite a bit. So when I was discussing liberal versus not, it was just for conversation. Frankly, I've met many people with the North Idaho Republicans group that I think are great, reasonable people. I think sometimes we throw around that word rhino way too often. We have different philosophies. The founders wanted us to have differing opinions. They wanted us to have pinch points to where we had to, make arguments, and things were not supposed to be rubber stampable. But we're going to continue to let Teresa say what she has to say, and either it will come to its own conclusion that there's nothing there, or maybe she's onto something. I mean, look, we know that machines are not reliable. We know that from everything that has happened to us over the past several years, deep fakes, AI, we're not in control like we think we are. And I personally, when it comes to voting, do not understand why we can't do things on good old sheet paper and hand counts. I mean, I think it's bullshit that it takes as long as it does for them to give us the results back. I mean, and maybe Jen Locke can answer this for us. How in the hell does it take hours to get results when you're scanning them into a machine that's supposed to automate things? Just out of curiosity, is that the machine's fault? Is that incompetency? Is it, what is it? I don't know. But you're not going to convince me, especially when it comes to the days that we live in, that it's not the best policy to do it the good old fashioned way.
And because one thing I think in that segment, we'll have to have Teresa back, but people say, well, why are you raising a problem? What's the solution? I mean, that's not the only counter argument, but that's one of them. And I do want to direct you back to her website, eyeonelections.org, and I am sharing that to the screen because you can enter your name so that you can follow along, get updates from this grassroots organization. And then also there's a tab here that talks about solutions where Teresa and some of the team members that are working on this together are proving that you absolutely can hand count. It's efficient, it's possible, it's timely. And I believe even as they've done test runs, they're proving that in a lot of cases they may be able to turn around results more quickly than, at least in this last election, we were receiving the results and they were being machine counted.
Yeah.
A lot more to that, to be continued.
We just had a message from Watchman Ministries. They're saying that the event on Saturday, the 14th, has been canceled. So I'm not certain whether or not, I assume we're talking about the eye on elections. We'll provide that information once we confirm on our social media so that people can know. But anyway, so we've had a lot of discussion tonight. I've already received, because I had 40 minutes to look through my messages that I don't normally do while I'm broadcasting. And I know that I've made a couple of you upset. One of you said, I've lost all of your support. You will never vote for me. Okay, cool.
Wait, and that was
over the militia deal.
Oh, the militia.
And I want to come back and I want to just address this as we get ready to
Are you telling them
conclude.
they shouldn't be able to show up down there with their guns on?
No.
I mean, they have.
Well, what I'm saying is, number one, you have a problem because you have law enforcement that has not clearly addressed this to the local community.
Right.
Number two, if in fact you are there to be a deterrence, the orders came out directly from whoever Badger and Leprechaun are, and they specifically said they were deploying, mobilizing for backup riot control, not a deterrence. Also, I believe that it is good to be a gray man. If those of you that love tactical things, you already know this term. Your presence there. You don't have to show your guns if you're armed to put a presence out to where people know these are guys and ladies that you don't want to mess with. But think about this. If local law enforcement has a credible threat, and I think, Matt, I'm going to see if I can't throw up your comment because your comment was a good comment. Let me spin this to you, Dan, because I asked Matt to articulate, okay, well, what's your plan? What is your plan if nobody shows up that is armed and Antifa is overwhelming numbers? What then? Let them burn police cars and destroy businesses for a week in LA. What's your plan? You ran for sheriff and you should have had a plan, or you should have a plan. You know what? You're exactly right, Matt. First of all, as sheriff, and we're talking about hypotheticals now, but I was an executive protection agent in high-risk environments outside the United States, and we had multiple plans. And you know what some of those plans were from the beginning? Is to avoid the problem to begin with. You go out of your way to tactically come up with your plans so that you don't get into these hard situations. You have a sheriff that has failed to unite anybody in this county when it comes to these type of events. And I will prove my point by saying, let's suppose that Sheriff Bob Norris, because we know that Chief White would not be working with the militia. I'm pretty safe to conclude that. If Bob Norris decided that he was going to bring in the local militia, again, I don't even know who this group is. They're going by, commanding officer and first sergeant. So we assume it's militia. But if your sheriff was working with the militia on the side to say, hey, I'm going to bring you in for backup security in Coeur d'Alene, which is not my jurisdiction, but it is my jurisdiction depending on the day in the week. What does that say about his discernment by allowing an organization that he has there to work along with him that's leaking their ops plan, where everybody in the entire freaking county now knows what's going on?
Now they got to change their plan.
So, I mean, this kind of stuff is, I'm not going to say better left to professionals, but there is a reason that you have professionals that protect us in our county and in our government. Yes, every one of us has a right. We have a personal responsibility to protect us. That's why I'm armed. That's why I'm armed everywhere I go. Because when seconds count, law enforcement, we get that. But this is an event where you can plan. It's almost like you're using the argument, well, what if an army shows up and our military isn't there to confront it? You're kind of mixing apples and oranges. You're talking about a large event where somebody thinks that something big is going to happen. And yet this tells me that if you have all these guys showing up to show their presence, they have zero confidence in Bob Norris and the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and Lee White with the Coeur d'Alene PD.
Well, Matt actually is speaking to that, saying their militias are organizing because it's apparent law enforcement doesn't seem to have a plan. And if they do, they're not helping citizens at all by communicating anything.
So again, Matt, it's every man for himself, because who's in charge? I mean, there is a reason that we have a sheriff in a county, and that is to be the incident commander, to make certain that everything is properly vetted out, that you have the proper reinforcements needed to secure the county. Let's say it again, not go to war, but secure the county. Now, he can use whatever methods he needs to secure the county, but by the admission that you have the citizens that have to stand up and do this, I've seen no evidence. I mean, we can talk about what ifs all day, and you're a smart guy. I can tell by your comments. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, nobody is going to come in and start a massive fight, knowing that just about every person and grandma is packing heat. I mean, you know that they're not going to do that, but what they can do is they can be there protesting, and one of the people that decide they want to agitate this dresses up like one of your militia guys or one of your Second Amendment armed citizens and does something, and then chaos ensues. Be a gray man, stand back and be ready. If you're really tactically sound, if this were me, I would be in the vicinity. I would let the sheriff know, hey, here's where I'm going to be. And if it turns into a riot where they're burning cars and, burning buildings, well, we're a pretty small community. We're not LA. Those that have skill sets would be there pretty darn quick. But again, you have to have an incident commander. Who in the militia is the incident commander? Is everybody united? I mean, I'm looking at their ops plan and I go, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about, because they're running their mouths all over the internet, letting everybody see what their ops plan are. And I'm supposed to trust this guy to be the incident commander during an event? So anyway, I've beat this up enough. We're going to end tonight with a saying from the founders. My last slide of the night from my favorite George Washington. We have that up on the screen. Mm-hmm. He says, if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. You may not like what I have to say tonight. I may not like what you have to say. You may not like what Teresa or Ed or Matt or any of the discussion had to take place tonight, but we all share this right as Americans. We have the right to peacefully assemble. We have the right to protest peacefully. We have the right to free speech, to debate. That is how we become better human beings, is by debating our ideas and learning something. My hope for all of you is that you remember that we did not descend from fearful men. We descended from men who understood the times, they acted accordingly, and they dedicated their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. And now that is up to us to continue that tradition. So as Donna gets ready to take us out of here tonight, I'll encourage all my friends, whether you like me today or not, stay strong and of good courage. Remember your heritage. May God bless you all. We'll see you soon.
And come on, Tad, if you see Dan out in Coeur d'Alene again, be nice. Be nice. I think your dad likes him.
He didn't tell me I had a problem at the time.
He
saw him
didn't.
at tacos.
He said, pleasure to meet you, sir.
I asked
Big old
Tad
smile on
all
his
about
face.
his background and what he did, and I had no idea that Tad was so offended by that meeting.
Tad. Ed, I don't disagree with you that some really are just itching for the opportunity to engage. I think you're probably right on that one. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. Remember to visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports on the Kootenai County political power players, and that is at libertywithoutcompromise.com. Remember to like and follow the Idaho Sheriff Facebook page. A lot of you follow the content on there, but you haven't liked and followed the page yet. Maybe you're doing that on purpose. But in case not, like and follow. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because all those archived live stream episodes are there, including other exclusive reports. And follow the Idaho Sheriff over on X.
They may get pissed off, though, with the content. It may not align with what their belief is.
It's even a little more aggressive over there on X.
Yeah.
My handle on X is Ride the Fader. Ride the Fader.
Ed, I will call you maybe as early as tomorrow.
I gave him your number.
I know. It
He
has
probably
been,
thought-
it has been hectic.
It has been hectic.
I get to see my grandson in a week, and I've been a little preoccupied.
For those of you listening to our podcast, remember to join in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And for you podcasters, you can listen and subscribe to Liberty Without Compromise wherever you get your shows. And with that,
Go to Stella Cigars in Spirit Lake.
on Main Street in Spirit Lake.
Foundation Cigars, Stallone. They have wine now.
Oh, yes.
Brad, Lisa, great patriots,
Yeah.
great contributors to our local community. So remember to pray for Jim. Jim, same things in the fight of his life. Todd had surgery. He's recovering, but they found more bone that they're going to have to go back in and take out. And remember my good smoking buddy, Ron.
We'll see you guys next week.
Are we going to go down to the Coeur d'Alene show this weekend?
The Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene. Okay. I'm afraid I get shot now.
Right. You're up here running your mouth, Wilson. See you guys maybe somewhere this weekend.
I'm going to go practice with my Mantis X Blackbeard that I got from Mark Court at Patriot Hangout.
Great idea.